Welcome to the debate. Welcome to the debate this evening, ladies and gentlemen. We want to start right on time, so ready to gather around and sit down. We're going to get the ball rolling shortly. We'd like the candidates to take their places on the podium alphabetically. You can figure that part out. Right to left. Brain turned off. Candace, what? Yeah, which? Listen.
Here, I've got a chair. I have 2 sheets of paper. One said 30 seconds and one said stop. Thank you.
Close quarters.
Okay. Welcome to the Southeast area. We'll call this a debate tonight. We have the unique opportunity to cover 3 different candidates. 2 of the official primary winners and also a write-in candidate registered with the city. My name is Ken Miller. I'm resident of Spring Creek neighborhood across the street. Here this evening we're representing 3 different neighborhoods: Spring Creek, Provo South, and Provo neighborhoods of the city. Our moderators tonight are going to be Mary Miller, chairperson of the Spring Creek neighborhood, Hannah Peterson, vice chair of the Provo neighborhood, and Vicki Connect, the chairperson of the Provo South neighborhood. Our timer for the activity is going to be Crystal Gatwick. Candace just got introduced. Welcome our candidates, who without them we wouldn't be doing this. Ms. Sherrie, Everett, Ms. Michelle Capusi, and Mr. Odell Minor. Thank you for coming. We're not going to call this a big debate, fist fight, jump up and down, scream a lot kind of an activity, but we are going to offer opportunities for the candidates to hear questions and an opportunity for, we'll call it a rebuttal. We will not have an audience participation in this activity. However, we do invite the candidates to stick around afterwards. You're welcome to talk to them personally, clarify some issues that might have been brought up, etc. With that, I was sent a text that I need to begin with. It didn't arrive yet, so we're going to give you that information anyway. Vicki's going to introduce our beginning activity, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, we're going to give the candidates 4 minutes to introduce themselves. In that introduction, they're going to tell us what makes them so special and why they should be mayor. And they also are going to tell us their qualifications as well. Thank you. And yes, we'll just go ahead with that. Sherrie? Okay.
Turn that on, too.
Thank you. My name is Sherrie Everett. It's a little soft on the back. I can't hear it.
Okay.
And I've got it touched up to my lips almost. I don't want to get rid of lipstick. Can you hear me back there? Okay. I will speak up and use my theater voice, right? My name is Sherrie Everett. I've lived in Provo for over 30 years. I've served on the city council. I've served in the neighborhood program. And I've served on many of the committees in the city dealing with transportation, housing, budget, too many to list, but I'm also serving now. I went to serve up on the board at UTA to help them complete some reforms and to watch out for Provo's interests and our county's interests. I want to thank the neighborhood chairs that have organized this event tonight. It's not easy to do a job for free and to be in the crosshairs of everybody's, we need it this way, but thank you so much for setting this up and putting it together. And Odell, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I know you wanted to have
Based in the neighborhood that invited me. This is the correct neighborhood.
I wanted to say that, I agree with you, Odell. You want to have a campaign based on substance and serious matters and talk about those, and I agree with that. This shouldn't be a popularity contest. We really need to dive down deep on matters and issues and make a determination about where we go in this city. So tonight, I would like to ask your permission, because anytime we dive into serious matters, it often turns out that we think that we're being mean-spirited or difficult, and it's been a challenge. But I want to ask your permission tonight. I want to ask your permission to speak candidly, to speak frankly, to talk about the serious things in our city. And to do that without being seen as mean or difficult, but that we're really trying to talk about the things that matter. Is that all right with you? Can I have your permission to talk that way tonight? Thank you.
I felt like she's talked like that at every debate, so
I feel like she's had that approach at every debate, so it won't be any different for me. My name is Michelle Kafusi. Something that makes me, as you said, special for running for Provo mayor is I am homegrown, born and raised in Provo. Raised by a single mom, 7 siblings. Provo raised me. Oftentimes, we were the family that struggled. I've lived on, as they say, both sides of the track, and I understand it. And I have a soft place in my heart for the underdog. Because of that, once I got married, I've been married for 29 years, I have 5 adult children. We moved to Philadelphia. Our whole goal was to work our way back to Provo. We knew that Provo was where we wanted to be to raise our children so they could have the positive experience that I was able to have. We came back, we worked hard, we got engaged in civil activities in the community, headed up many boards, asked to volunteer, asked to head things up, eventually pushed to the front to run for school board. I ran for school board 8 years ago. My first campaign was a grassroots campaign out of my kitchen with my girlfriend. I remember the county called and said, we need to put down a name of a campaign manager, and I looked at my girlfriend sitting at my kitchen table and said, will you be my campaign manager? And she said, sure. So we put her down, and off we went. Knocking door to door, day after day, and we ended up unseating the incumbent, which led to 4 years of wonderful experience. The city and the school district are partners. We work hand in hand. We have multiple similar interests that have to do with economic development, property rights, what's coming down the pipe, how to prepare for it. That's been a great training ground for me. After my 4-year term was up, I wanted to get a feel for it. I asked my constituents, have I served you well? And do you know what they came back and said? We trust you. Go for a second term. I went for a second term, ran unopposed. I'm in my 7th year of my second term. loving, learning, working on a functioning board. Our Board of Education is, I've been spoiled because we are a high-functioning board. We get a lot done. I appreciate every single board member that I've been able to get to know and work with from all around the city. The great thing about the Board of Education is we have 7 board members. We're different than the City Council. We don't have anything called at-wide. We are represented according to our neighborhood and our neighborhood schools, which is fantastic. We get to hear the voice from every area of the city. That's something I would like to see done at the city. I would like to see more balance and equality throughout the city. Multiple people, as I've knocked doors, have said things to me like, we feel like we're not heard. We feel like no one's listening. And I'll say, do you know who your representative is? They have no idea who their representative is. We need to fix that. I'm ready to work. I'm current. I'm the only one up here that's holding an elected seat, a political seat at this point that was elected by the constituents of Provo. I'm in the meetings behind closed doors. The city changes every year. It's not the same city it even was a year ago, but I have been in the mix of it the whole time.
Is it permissible for us to stand? Is this not? For whatever reason, I grew up with an interest in city government. I suppose it probably stems from the fact that I won an American Legion essay contest when I was in high school. For whatever reason, just always interested in the civic side of things. Went to Brigham Young University, graduated eventually with a bachelor's degree in history and political science, went on to receive a master's degree from BYU. Why am I running? And eventually a doctorate from the University of Utah with an emphasis in public personnel administration and public finance. Our summary of our resume is on these little flyers. You're welcome to pick one up. If you'd like one now, somebody, one of our campaign people can bring those to you so you can start to review that through this discussion. Why now? Why Provo? I suppose more so than anything else. Eric, would you mind? This lady right here would like to have one of our flyers. Oh, there's Jack is back to pass them out there. More so than anything else, my life was defined by being elected to office some years ago. The youngest city commissioner ever elected in Provo. At that time, we had a commission form of government. It's changed to a mayor-council form of government now, which is a little different. If you have an interest in that, I welcome any questions you might want to ask about that. I went on from there to finish the doctorate, then worked at the Utah League of Cities and Towns, consulting statewide with the cities in Utah. Specifically, I remember a consulting assignment to PACE and helping them solve some of the administrative problems they were having over there at the time. I finished my first retirement, so to speak, at Utah Valley University, teaching at the university. I love Provo. We've always been close to Provo. Dorothy and I built our home here about 40 years ago. We live in Edgemont area, northeast Provo. One of the main reasons we live up there is because I have riding horses, and I grew up loving horses and riding horses, and I still have 2 horses that we love to ride and get out in these beautiful mountains. The valley is beautiful from the foothills, and we are very fortunate to live here. We'll talk about some of the specific issues that are on your mind. This particular campaign has been fascinating. Specifically, I am running as a write-in candidate because there were so many people in the primary that we all split the vote. If you'd like to have the specific, well, maybe we'll get to the specific numbers later if that's of interest to you. This was important, we felt, to Provo voters to have a choice for someone who has the strength of credentials and the background qualifications that I'm presenting. Those assets will move to Provo City in the mayor's office as you cast your votes in this election. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I also second your motion, Sherrie. Thank you very much to the people who have come tonight, and thank you for including me in this debate. This is the first debate that I've been included in. So let's start with a hand for spring curriculum inclusiveness.
Two things I neglected to mention. We thank Provo Channel 17 for being here tonight. They are broadcasting this event live. So if you want to text your friends and family left at home, they can dial it up on YouTube. It'll also be available on the recording for future reference. Also, I neglected to recognize Mr. Mayor, Mr. Norm Thurston, our state legislative representative for this area of Provo. Turn it over to the moderators who will manage things from here, and I'm going to get out of the way. You guys get the good mic.
Okay, you'll have 2 minutes for this question, and we are going to start with Michelle, actually, and then Odell, to Sherrie. And this question is from a resident in the Provost neighborhood. All of these questions were submitted by residents, and the question is, many residents are concerned about the increase of petty theft and crime in our neighborhoods. How do you plan to address the understaffing of the police department, and, as mayor, what will you do to improve safety in our neighborhoods?
Our police department is understaffed. They actually were cut, I believe it was 8 years ago, by 4, possibly 5 policemen, and have not even been caught up since then. We are understaffed. They're busy. Chief Ferguson is swamped. He's utilizing every single asset he has to protect the city and keep the city safe. Petty theft. There's one way to solve petty theft. We lived in a neighborhood back east. There was petty theft. You know what we did? We got together and said, I'm sick of it. Are you sick of it? We're all sick of it. We all have to be aware and start paying attention. And by all the neighbors and citizens getting involved, we were able to make an impact. We were able to spot and stop and question questionable cars that were driving through the neighborhood. And that's something, what's petty theft? Everything counts. If they steal my gym shoes out of the back of the car, that's significant. I don't see anything petty about that. They're expensive. I've known that through the studies of sitting on the Citizens Advisory Board down in Provo with the police, they have talked to us about the peaks and valleys of petty theft. The peaks happen during spring break. The peaks happen during UEA. UEA starts tomorrow. Here's your heads up. Lock your car doors. Lock your garage doors. Let's work together to see if we can get this under control, and let's do what we can to go to the city council and ask for another police officer or 2 or 3.
We are a Provo because of the public safety that's here. People all over the country, especially from surrounding states and other places, move here because of the quality of life we have and because of the safety and security. Public safety and security is the #1 role of government. It is at the national level, it is at the state level, and it also is in Provo. We have about 107 police officers now, and the national standard for police officers should be closer to 120 for the size of population we have. We have approximately 120,000 people, 118,000 to be exact in Provo, and we're way understaffed in terms of the police department. There are 2 major initiatives that I will launch as the mayor of Provo. The first initiative I will launch is to get more community policing done. We need our police officers into the schools when the youngsters are still at a very formative age. In the junior high school and senior high school levels, we need them to see the police officers, we need them to see the uniforms and become conversant with them. As they do, they will get answers to 2 questions. Number 1, when they're out driving their cars around the city at night, they will be able to observe, after having been trained by police officers, they will be able to observe what am I looking for in the way of crimes, including petty theft, and who do I call? How do I get a call into the police department? Those are the main initiatives that will come. And another part of the answer is we need to do a lot better work linking up with the private security people that are downtown, at the banks, at the temple, at the businesses that are downtown. Our police department needs to coordinate better with those folks.
Thank you. We do need more officers. We know that that's there. We're talking about the things that we need to put in place, but we can't do any of it without revenue. That's the bottom line. We cannot do any of it without revenue. So the option for the city council is to tax you more, or we participate in smarter economic development in our city that keeps taxes low and our fees low, but grows the economic pie. That's the only way we're going to have sustainable budget to hire the officers that we need to have. Odell, we actually already do have officers that have worked with our schools. We actually have officers that are assigned to our neighborhoods in our COP. I didn't interrupt you. We actually have our own COP officers that work specifically with our neighborhoods. We have neighborhoods that want to participate in community-oriented policing and neighborhood watches, and those are coming up as well. So how do we deal with it? We have to take our own personal responsibility to secure our cars where we can, light our streets and where those cars are parked where we can, not leave our valuables out on the seats where we can. But the root of all of it, and the reason the petty theft is occurring, is because of the drug issues in our community. And they're growing and growing and growing. So we have to take responsibility as a community. We have to acknowledge that there are additional challenges and that people are pilfering cars in order to raise money that they can go pawn something or sell something so they can get their next fix. We have to address that as well.
Odell, you'll be the first responder, and then Sherrie, and then Michelle.
Provo City Finance staff forecasts revenues and expenditures for 10 years into the future. The latest projections show that costs for the current level of services will exceed our income in every one of those years.
Start
Under
over.
your
I
administration,
can't even hear the question. Can you start over? I'm trying to write down key points.
Cool. All right, here we go again. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Provo City Finance, the department, has forecast revenues and expenditures for the next 10 years into the future. The latest projections show that those costs for the current level of services will exceed our income in every one of those years. Under past administrations, the budget was balanced by postponing investments in needed infrastructure and reducing rainy day funds. As mayor, how will you address those situations?
Thank you. Our big shortfall right now in Provo is our sales tax revenue. It's about 18 million, and it needs to be at least double or triple that amount. The only other main source of revenue is the property tax, which the city collects fundamentally when we pay our property taxes in November. A major portion of that, about 70%, between 65 and 70% of all the sales taxes we pay go to the school district. Municipalities get much less than that. The county also gets a share of that remaining amount. We won't get into all of the detail of that except to say we really have to expand our tax base in Provo City. That's our key element. And let me just sound this theme right now, because all of these answers are not going to be at City Hall. We have in Provo City the greatest human capital, I think, of any place in the nation. By education, we have a high education level, and we have people involved in our city because of neighborhoods like this. By the way, that traces back to the Minor, Grange, and Hillier administration. We'll leave it at that, except to say that your involvement in this, and involvement of key people in economic development, is really the fundamental answer to this. We have great economic development people at the city. I was at an economic development summit that was in Southtown Mall in August, and we're in good hands, but we need to work closer with the private sector, and we need to have more tax base. This will be a fundamental emphasis of the minor administration.
Everybody wants sales tax revenue. Retail's changing. By the raise of hands, how many of you bought something off of Amazon this month? Guess what? We get that sales tax revenue now because the state of Utah fixed that. But it doesn't put brick and mortar stores because we're busy. We need different ways to buy, and we're innovating. So sales tax revenue is going to be different. It's never going to be the cash cow that we think it is. And you know what the other issue is? It's subject to ebbs and flows in the economy. I was on the council when we had to cut the budget by $5 million. Remember the tough few years ago? We weathered that much better than Orem weathered that because we had diversified our tax base. So we've got to look at how we diversify our tax base in this city and create the kind of tax base that is stable, and let's use our retail options as the icing on the cake. We have to build the foundation first. So that's really the only way that we're going to do that is through smart economic development, growing the pie, putting more value on our pieces of property. That is how we make sure that we meet for future needs. Provo City for a very long time, in previous administrations, never raised your property tax. Boy, that sounds good, we love it. But the cost of operations didn't stay the same. The cost of replacement and keeping our infrastructure in place didn't stay the same. So the council that I was on began to unravel that budget and begin to look at things that would make that budget sustainable. Because by law, as a city, we have to balance that budget. It's in the state code. So we have to live within our means. And I don't want to put more burdens upon our homeowners without balancing that more appropriately in our community.
Over chairs. I'm really clumsy, so when I fall, just know it happens all the time. Balancing the budget. I was on the Board of Education when we went into the recession. Do you know how horrible it was to stand up in front of our staff, all our teachers, all our faculty and staff, employees, bus drivers, lunch workers, and say, we're sorry, but we're freezing all your pay? That was horrible. It was hard. But it's something we had to do. It was tough. We did it. We did it. We did it for 2 years. We came out of the recession far better off than any other district. And the best part was we have done nothing but play catch up since. We immediately implemented the COLA, the cost of living. It costs to live, believe it or not. I'm not sure, I know taxes is a bad word in Provo. But are we doing ourselves any good by not even allowing a cost of living raise to just automatically kick in? It just is beyond me. I bet at your employment, at least 50% of you automatically get your cost of living raise every year to compensate. We need to be aware of the needs of the city. Running a city is not cheap. We also have a unique situation here. About 50% of our BYU campus, our churches, regardless of the religious dominion, the hospital, none of those are able to be taxed. They're held harmless. So where does the burden of the tax go? It goes on me. It goes on you. It goes on the businesses. It's a unique situation in Provo. We have got to continue with balancing the budget and being frugal. We're known for being frugal. Let's just keep at it and only allocate the funds that are proven to be used worthy. Every dollar counts.
Okay, going along with that same logic that we've been just talking about, research has shown that we have a main artery bleed. Because artery bleed, we're bleeding because of our tax situation. And that is because most people are leaving Provo to buy their groceries. We desperately need a Walmart, a Target, or a Smith's Marketplace. What will you do to bring those businesses to Provo? And let me mention that we had a mayor once on a time fire the head of economic development, and he took it over. And out of that came Riverwoods and the Provo Town Square.
Sherrie, you'll go first, then Michelle, then Michelle.
Thank you. We want these businesses to come and invest in our community. We want them to come and build a $40 million facility and stock it full of all the goods and services that we want. And we expect them to do it because we're Provo. We're awesome. We want them to be here. And they should do it out of the goodness of their heart. Why did Trader Joe's go to Warren? Because they picked the place that they could get the best return on their investment. So as a business owner, as much as I love this community, I can't invest in something unless I know that I'm going to make a return. And I'm going to put that money in a place where I can make that return. So what do we need to do to get them to come? They'll come when we're master planned and we have enough of the economic density or enough what we call beds and heads in our area that we can assure that they can make a return on their investment and be profitable. That's the only way they're going to come. It's the truth for the West Side. It's why we haven't been able to get a grocery store out there. Because we're too rural. And because it's easier for Smiths to go and make that investment somewhere else. So we're living in a little different economic climate. They're now going to delivery systems. You can call Smith's and order your groceries, and for $5 they bring them to your house. We're just seeing the start of that. So if Smith's can take your groceries to your house, what makes you think they want to put $50 million into a store somewhere? We've got to deal with the real conditions, and we've got to look at the way to make them profitable. If they see that through our master plans, they will come.
I hope we never lose grocery shopping. Sometimes it's the only chance I get to be alone and walk through the aisles at 11 at night, and I truly do enjoy it. I take my time, and it's enjoyable. Yes, Provo has a reputation for being the incubator. We're famous for all these startup companies and this great entrepreneurship, the spirit that we have. But what happens when they outgrow us? They leave us, and when they leave us, they take their tax dollars with them. What can we do as city employees and city officials to get these companies to stay? I want to have the conversation. Qualtrics, please don't leave us. Please stay. What do we need to do to keep you? You employ multiple, hundreds of people, as does Vivint. I was visiting with Vivint the other day, and he takes great pride in his part-time workers that he's helping get through BYU and UVU. We have to keep those companies here. The tax base, if we keep them here and draw in others, then we all rise to the top. It benefits all of us. I'm not gonna lie, when Amazon came out and said they were looking for a new headquarters, I immediately thought, why not Provo? I don't even care if we go out for the bid and we're the laughing stock. At least we went out for the bid, our name's out there, we're open for business. Let's get paid professional salary jobs here. Let's get people to stay here. I want my kids to stay here. I want them to be able to find a job when it's time for them to raise their families. That's my goal. It's the reason I came back, because of my experience in Provo. And our number one quality that we have in Provo is the people. And so we've got to take that to the next level. I saw that coming.
The Smiths in downtown Provo is one of the major stores that Smiths has anywhere in the country. Last year they turned a profit of about $33 million on the grocery business. The Smiths in downtown Provo is the reason why there's not a grocery store on the west side of Provo, because Smiths owns that property and doesn't want to sell it to a competitor. At the Economic Development Summit in August that I spoke about earlier, the grocery store people were there, and there was a lot of discussion about this very matter. And the question was, how in an industry that has a very small margin can we get to smaller stores? We happen to live in an area where there's a Days store. It's not competitive like the big box stores. So we need to start in Provo with another big box store on University Avenue. It doesn't matter to me if it's North University Avenue, Central University Avenue, or South University Avenue. We have a Sam's Club down there now. We need the American Free Enterprise System to work in Provo, and we need to bring a Costco or another large grocery store, multifaceted facility like that to South University Avenue or North University Avenue. We also need, I think, another grocery store to compete with Smith's in downtown Provo. There are some avenues that I've explored that are potential options for us. Beyond just groceries, we need to be able to buy, as it said in many of these discussions, we need to be able to buy a soccer ball in Provo. We need to dive deeper than we've been doing in economic development and expand this total base so we have the services we want and we have the income from the sales tax that we want.
Is it my turn?
No. Yes, it is. You already answered this question, right?
Oh, Sherrie, what the heck? Why didn't you tell me? I'm sorry.
It is your turn though for the next
Oh, okay, because I'm like, am I losing my mind up here? Because I thought it was my turn. I'm trying to figure it
You're right
out.
on the money.
It will be Michelle's turn first, and then Odell, and then Sherrie. For the past 2 years, the City Council has listed zoning enforcement as their top priority. What are your thoughts on zoning enforcement and over-occupancy in Provo? And as mayor, what do you believe is your role in zoning enforcement?
It's been great having relationships with the City Council. I get to pick their brains, and they're nice enough to let me. And I have been versed on this. They got together and listed their goals and priorities, and I'm not sure every single person had zoning at the top, but they did a number system. Am I correct, City Council members? And zoning compliance came to the top, floated to the top. It's been the goal for 2 years. They've been working on it. They're coming with some ideas, and I have to be honest, as I've heard their ideas and I understand them, I'm a little bit worried about putting a mark on a millennial's record that will stick with them for the rest of their life. We've got to enforce our zoning, but we have to do it fairly. We have to protect our neighborhoods, but at the same time, we have to entice the millennials. The millennials are they're free thinkers. I love them. They're not like us that go to work from 9 to 5. They create in their home, and they take breaks. They do things, but they accomplish just as much, if not more than us. They've learned different. My oldest daughter, who's 28, down to my twins that are 21, just in that range as being on the Board of Education and being in schools and constantly checking test scores. Everybody is learning different. And so we need to engage the zoning compliance. We need to come to the table. They feel like they're not heard. We need to let them have a voice. And at the same time, emphasize our neighborhoods.
The answers to zoning are found in the neighborhoods. Neighborhoods have played a key role up until about the last 8 years, and then they've been fundamentally reduced to messenger people. We need a new major emphasis on neighborhoods and on neighborhood activation and engagement. There are unique zoning issues out in this neighborhood. They differ some from the people in immediate areas surrounding campus, and they change from location to location. Just to mention the major quadrants, the Grandview, the Edgemont, the Provost, the Spring Creek, and the Southwest Park. There are major issues in Southwest Provo right now that are begging decision in terms of how the development occurs out there and what the infrastructure is that supports that. There's no fundamental good transportation from that new high school in the west side of Provo, for instance, over to Center Street. The answer to the problem is the engagement of the neighborhoods. And Odell Minor will suggest in the first few months of my administration that we redefine neighborhoods this way. We will make neighborhood chairs, we give them a job description, and we'll define them as statutory advisory bodies. This will be an enhancement of the neighborhood role in city government and give us the input that we need from you here in this part of the city to make the zoning decisions. It's really fairly complex, but by doing that, it's not a city hall solution that's foisted upon you. It's doing what the constitutional framers of this great republic said: if you want good government, leave it in the hands of the people.
Long arms.
Odell, I'm going to have to correct you about the transportation to the high school. I sit on the Transportation Mobility Advisory Committee. In fact, I chaired it for the last year, and the road plans are there. There will be an extension of the Lakeview Parkway all the way up to the school. There will also be an extension from 620 North out to the Lakeview Parkway. There will be routes coming from 1390 to the school. 620 North will go to the school. All of that transportation has been planned, worked through. As I have sat as UTA's representative on the Mountain Land Association of Governments, the funding is there and the prioritization is there. They're on it, and it's on its way. Now, back to zoning. My frustration with zoning, and I spent a lot of time on zoning issues when I was on the council, is we tend to get the little tiny hammer and tap at something, and we ignore the real fundamental problem. These young professionals are the future of our city. They need to be part of this community. They need to have a place to live. And we need to help them to feel part of this community, and that doesn't happen by exclusion or criminalizing behavior of those that may be innocent in signing up a contract. I don't like that statute that we're working on. That said, I know it's tough in the neighborhoods, but I think there are other solutions to get to the root of the problem. And I believe that this community needs to be accepting of each other and learn from each other and realize that not everybody lives in the ideal family unit in the ideal place.
Okay, we will have Odell will be first, and then you figure it out.
I can see why it takes three of you down there. There's a lot going on here.
I'll go ahead and read my question here. Thank you. Provo is blessed to have incredible water resources. Much of our water comes from springs at Provo Canyon and South Fork. The Parks Master Plan states that South Fork could be potentially developed. Do you feel Provo's Canyon property should be protected or developed? And what will you do to preserve Provo's water resources with all of the projected new growth?
I get that first? Yes, you do. That's almost a leading question, because as city commissioner some years ago, Central Utah Project came to us at Provo City and said, don't worry, we're going to control all the water from Deer Creek Reservoir down. We're going to put it in the new treatment facility out here. But don't worry about your water rights. We'll give you all the water rights back you need from this treatment facility. And our attorneys in the city were not capable of handling this. We had to go outside with the Provo Metropolitan Water Board. Jackson Howard said to the Central Utah Project, "The hell you will." Sometimes you just need to use those expletives to emphasize the point. We have the water rights today because the city commission that I was part of took on Central Utah Project. They wanted to run our water rights. All the water rights up Provo Canyon, all the water rights in South Fork are owned and managed by Provo City. No, we don't need more development up there. There's a lovely park up South Fork. There's two parks that are up there. A major one right off the road, and then another one with lovely pavilions up in what's called, I used to remember the family name. I can't quite get that name out right now, but suffice to say, that there's just about the right amount of development up there for the next 10 years. The stream comes down and goes through into the Provo River there at the junction of South Fork at Vivian Park. And we are well served today because of the water rights we have. And no, we don't need any more parks up there for the time being. The parks we have are very well managed by the city.
We also need to give a lot of credit to Mayoral Bingham, who was our department head, and has purchased water rights to prepare us for 40 years, 50 years out. He was very, very visionary in the efforts that he undertook. Canyon development. We bought a canyon a few years ago as a city in order to protect it. We'll have to decide if we need to buy 2 canyons to protect it. But if development can occur, I know that there are sometimes ways to do sensitive development, but we have to decide as a community if that meets our long-term vision, our long-term need. And there needs to be much more discussion about this, much more discussion about what we want and how we fund and pay for maintaining that watershed in that area. We're going to have increasing pressures to develop and sprawl. We are, because we all are having children. 70% of our growth is coming from us. It's not coming from out of state, it's coming from us. So we really need to look at the way we create this community and be willing to have the discussions about the variety of housing types and how we want to protect our open spaces in this community.
I just want to start by saying thanks, Odell, for your service 40 to 50 years ago. That's a game changer. It made a difference. It's impacting us even today. So I appreciate your efforts and your vision. Here we are, 40, 50 years later. We're growing. Everything's growing. The canyon's beautiful. I actually had the privilege of interacting with a homeowner up there about 10 days ago. And I said, tell me what the problem is with the water rights. And he said, how far back do you want to go and when do you want to start? I said, I want to learn everything. Talk to me about it. He shared his point of view, talked to the city, they shared their point of view, and yes, there is a little bit of a concern. We need to protect every green space we have. I'm a huge advocate for green space. I have jogged down that dang Southboard more times than I want to say, training for marathons. And it is beautiful. It is a beautiful jewel. I dropped my daughter off at the Girl Scout camp at the top of it. Cried my eyes out. It was the first time she went away from home. She had the time of her life. That canyon has a lot to offer. I see us coming to the table and having a conversation about what is best for the city. Protecting our water rights, because we're growing, we're going to need them. But also, what can we do to help with the development of parks and upkeep? We have a route tax in Provo that's built in exactly for that. It's built in for recreation, arts, and parks. And that money is there. So we need to take a look at it and see the needs and decide which park needs them the most. But I am a huge believer in keeping the parks and the canyons and in our control rather than federal government's or anyone else's.
It'll be Sherrie, then Michelle, then Odell.
Recently, there was a zone change, in fact, last evening, that was to be heard by the council. It has now been postponed until November. It is an interesting story because all of the PIC zone in the Provo Business Park in Southeast Provo, which is in my neighborhood, is zoned M1, light industrial. And now comes another individual, which would require changing a portion of that park into M2, which is a heavy industrial. The problem is that there are businesses already in amazing order down there that are functioning absolutely wonderfully. And a number of those businesses that are working very well down there are in a climate that must be almost hospital clean. No dust, no dirt, nothing. If you, as mayor, were to come across a situation as similar as this, where you are being asked to change what is in the 2020 plan, the 2050 plan, the general plan, how would you handle it? How would you ever let yourself get into this position of now having to decide, yes, the property that is asked to be rezoned to an M2 is not ideal. I live very close to Ironton. The business park, though what has been cleaned up, is Ironton. There's a lot of cleaning yet to do there. And I don't know what the deal was that was struck behind closed doors, but you can guarantee that you, as mayor, whoever you are, will be faced with that very same thing again. Please, tell us how you would handle that and what you would take into account as you evaluate which way to go.
Thank you. Can I have an extra minute? Because this is really important. This really is important. This is one of the pressures of growth. And we need to, as we're trying to decide what goes in that area, it is essential 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to our jobs and everything. I serve on the UTA board. We just did an entire public process, almost for naught, because the process didn't finish. We went through the Clearfield rail station, and Clearfield desperately wanted those jobs, desperately wanted that to come up there, but it was complicated and it was difficult. And we conducted a very public process as part of deciding whether we should sell that land to Clearfield City to be able to do what they wanted with it for economic development. Ultimately, the person chose a different place. But we held those meetings publicly, held public hearings, went through the whole thing so that people could understand what we were doing and what was happening. I'm a big believer in transparency. One of the things that I have loved about my service on the UTA board and change is that we talk only about the things in closed session that are allowed by the law, but we discuss in open session all of the other aspects of it so that the public knows it's on the record. And I believe that we can do that in a better way here. as we work through these issues in our community. If we're going for a zone change, there's a lot of administrative work, but it should come before the council, it should be discussed publicly, and then we make a good decision. And we make the decision that's the best decision for the most people for the longest foreseeable future.
I've been following this closely. As the council decided to postpone and talk about it November 14th, I thought to myself, at the bottom of all of this, whatever they decide, it needs to be fair. If they're opening it up for bidding or whatnot, the playing level must be fair. It's interesting, this new company that's out here that can't have a speck of dust because it causes problems with fiberglass. Holy cow, don't come move next to me. It's high tech and demands a lot. The good thing is the city council is vetting this. They are listening. And if you feel like you're not being heard, go to your city council member. Tell them your opinions and your feelings on this. City council has a hard job. If you're not familiar with the way this government runs in Provo, it's a partnership. There's not a lot that gets done if the city council and the mayor at odd ends. We have to work together. Progress happens when the city council and the mayor overlap, and in that overlap is where progress takes place. I believe the citizens need to be heard, and I do believe on the decision they make, whatever it may be, it has got to be open up for public bidding and transparent for everyone.
Along with the Connects, I was at a groundbreaking this past week down here in this subject piece of property, the Ironton Industrial Park. Vanderhall is making this, I call it a motorcycle car. That's what it looks like, but it's pretty pricey. I think that the prices range from the upper 20s to the upper 70s, 60s, and 70s. You can get some with a cover and otherwise. I didn't see from what I learned there. The mayor was there, the governor was there. Early morning, it was cold, but it looked to me like this was a perfect use for this ground. It was a very compatible use, and it would involve a huge manufacturing facility. The first total facility producing a car in Utah is what's being proposed, and the building is long and beautiful, and the land that's being talked about being rezoned is right adjacent to that. Right across the road, by the way, meaning Ironton Road that connects our city with Springville. On the east side is the Evans operation, sand and gravel. They've been reprocessing a lot of concrete there. They're not actually in the city. They're south of the city boundaries there, close, I think, neighbors to the county yards where they store their vehicles. The decision to make this change in the zoning at Ironton needs to be given a lot of weight, and I'm sure that's why the council decided to put it off. This also needs to be understood by all of us. When it comes to property and property management and buying and selling the property, it's totally in the purview of the city council. As the mayor, we would get involved with that with recommendations. We would assist with technical data. We would assist with input. But this is fundamentally a decision for the city council.
Michelle, then Odell, and Sherrie.
I'm just going back and forth. I'm going to keep guessing.
BRT is currently projected to have a $10 million shortage. UTA President and CEO Jerry Benson has said he expects the other entities involved in the project to step up too. Besides UDOT, the Mountain Land Association of Governments, Provo, Orem, and Utah County are also partners. We're going this is Sherrie again, we're going to expect that our partners are willing to experience as much pain as we do. Are you willing to share the pain? And if so, how would you come up with the money?
That's a loaded question. BRT is coming. It's passed, it's voted on. Those that tried to kick back against it went to the legal courts and they made the decision. It's coming. It is getting close to 50% done. And yes, they are over budget at this point. But after serving on the school board and building $90 million buildings and tons, like millions of dollars having to juggle and handle, I'm not a quitter. The project's halfway done. We're 10 million in debt. We might be 14 in 3 months. But we need to see this project through and we need to hold them accountable. That's the power we do have. We need to say at the end, you committed to these upgrades. We agreed to that. Don't you dare cut us there. You figure out somewhere else. But I'm just going to say, I really believe, I've seen this before many times, where you get halfway into the project, it sounds horrible, it sounds miserable, but as the project moves along, you're able to allocate funds and figure it out and communicate and collaborate. And fingers crossed, that's going to happen. As your mayor, I will hold their feet to the fire. That's the one power I have. This came before me. So it will not be my problem to say yes or no to BRT. My problem is to hold them accountable to what they promised.
We're going to speak frankly because that's what one of the candidates asked to have occur. Speaking frankly, I can tell you, as a candidate for mayor, this is the most divisive issue in our city right now. The reason it's divisive is because nobody, and I don't see how anybody, even people at this table up here who are on the UTA board, can be proud of the way this came about. People were completely ignored. The citizens were ignored. The council were promised things that were factual. And so what we have is, at best, a project that's at least 20 years ahead of its time. Some members of the city council have referred to BRT as the worst thing that ever happened in Provo. So Michelle is partially right. We do face it now. The council did approve it. It is underway. What we have to do as citizens is take a deep breath when we see these buses go by empty, which we have for 20 or 30 years. There's nobody sitting in this audience that hasn't represented that. So let's be candid about this and say this is a project that is over budget already, and it's going to come back on the city in some way. And as your mayor, I will hold UTA responsible for what they promised in the contract. The council approved a 50-year lease for 700 North. And it's really hard to cover this in less than 2 minutes, but I'll finish right now except to say you have a mayor that will represent your interests as it relates to mass transit.
I was angry at UTA when I went to serve on the UTA board. I was mad at trips to Switzerland and bad trustees and poor public process. And so rather than stand on the side and point my finger at them and say, you guys are a bunch of idiots, I said, send me. I'll go and I'll work. We've changed board processes. We've done 3 years of reforms. And when I got up there, guess what? They were already 2 years into the reforms. And we finished the reforms and got a clean bill of health from the U.S. Attorney, and they're now taking care of the other issues. So now we're here, and we're getting bad press, and we're going to get bad press for the next 5 years. It's just the way it is. Because you know what? If it bleeds, it leads. And so the best headline is BRT's over budget with controversial project. The reality is it was a 19-year project planned by our municipal planning organization and sanctioned by our county, Orem, Provo. And we funded it, we voted on it, somebody didn't like it, they tried to run signatures to stop the county from funding it, they tried to run signatures to stop Provo from leasing by calling it an administrative hearing. 3 judges shot it down. Now, when UTA applied for that in 2013, the bid had to be good until 2015. Guess what we did in 2015? We launched another study because we didn't believe the 2 studies that were already there. So our city paid money for a study that found out that it was the exact same thing. When government builds something, time is money. Labor is money. Materials are money. And when it's delayed by going through public process, which it is allowed, there is a cost. And that is the cost of the overrun. And I need to tell you so much more about that. So talk to me.
This question will be addressed to Odell first, and then Sherrie, and then Michelle.
This is going to address another elephant in the room, in every room you walk into, okay?
At least they're elephants and not
Yes.
donkeys.
Okay, so there are billboards now that can be seen that call attention, they're along the freeway, they call attention to the opioid epidemic. And the thing that we all have to respect is that it knows no socioeconomic boundary. It goes where it goes. My question to each of you as mayor, and I'm hoping that you will hit this hard, because there is no future if we have no people with same frames of mind to lead anyone. This is something that each of us need to do something about now. So as mayor, what are you willing to do to make a difference here? Not only for our city, but for the surrounding communities as well.
Consciousness in the city at large is really important, but fundamentally this is a law enforcement matter. It's a drug enforcement matter. And a lot of things need to happen on a number of fronts. We have other socioeconomic issues that we have to address here. They're just starting to get a handle on this in what I call the Rio Grande Project in Salt Lake City. This is what's called in technical parlance, this is an externality. We don't have or can't have total control on this in Provo because the opioids are not manufactured here. They're coming in either through pharmaceutical or through illicit means. The best way for us to interdict this is to educate our young people and to educate all citizens. And again, that can happen best at the neighborhood level. We can say, all right, we're experiencing a specific problem in this area or this area. Likely, it's going to come in those areas where economic development and other issues are also crucial. Law enforcement needs our full support with this. And law enforcement needs neighborhood chairs and anxiously engaged neighbors to report what's happening. How many times have we seen major problems and issues solved because an informed, alert citizen stepped forward and said, I saw this, I think this, we'll call and have this interdicted. That's our best answer to solving this opioid problem. Education, citizen engagement, law enforcement partnership.
Rio Grande is the result. This is not just a drug problem. This is an addiction issue. And that addiction issue comes when someone who's in pain becomes addicted, whether it's emotional pain, whether it's an escape from the world, whether it's I don't know how the city can really support those kinds of social services, but what we can do is bring greater awareness to our community and support those doing the work in our community as well. We have to have a heart and realize that this is not just people who end up addicted and their lives spiraled out of control. This is about treatment in our health centers, in our community, and we need to be vigilant as family members to watch for addiction within our own families. It's a big problem. It's not just appearing up with the homeless or on the streets. The other issue is we do need to have our police force having the tools that they need to do their jobs. I was a huge advocate for our drug dog that just retired from Provo City. He got there on one of the last days of my term, but that was what we fought to get that dog onto the force. And he did amazing work in the community to be able to take care of those kinds of issues. So it's a policing issue, but mostly it's a social issue and it's an awareness issue as a community, that this is here. If we're going to fund our social institutions, then we need to be talking to our state legislators, because it is a situation that crosses our community boundaries. We're growing together, and they're the ones over health and human services in our state.
So I'm a little bit leery to tell a personal story because already I have a target on my back every day and I'm vulnerable right now. But opioid addiction is near and dear to my heart. My maiden name was Garrett. I hope my sisters are okay with this. My brother Craig Garrett was the captain of the BYU football team when they were national champions. If you see him on the board now, you'll see deceased under his name. He was addicted to painkillers. He was a seminary teacher. He had his master's degree. He was a leader on the BYU football team when they took the national championship. You would never know what he was struggling with. Our family knew. We were good at putting up the fake covering for him. I'll never forget when we went we've gone through 1 million different counselings, and they have family counseling at the end of the 3-month stay and whatnot, and you have to go knee to knee. And I'll never forget what my brother said to me. He said, I hate it when I am addicted to these pills, but it's a monkey on my back and I can't get it off, and I don't know how to do it. Again, I had a brother who was brilliant, orthopedic surgeon at the Mayo Clinic. Same story. Who are the #1 prescription abusers? Medical professionals. We have to take this serious. I don't want to lose anymore. I've lost 2 to it. I want to thank Wasatch Mental Health. Anyone here from Wasatch Mental Health? They're an amazing partner for the city to work with. We need to educate. We need to not be afraid to confront. And we need to do what's best to help these people, because it's an addiction and they don't love having it.
I think we're actually going to hear from Sherrie first, and then Michelle, and then Odell.
In the Utah Code, under our form of government, the City Council has the power not to just review and pass the general budget, but to amend and revise, insert new items, and increase or decrease items of expenditure. In the tentative budget, when is it appropriate for the council to change or revise the mayor's budget?
They can change and revise it right up until they vote for it. I mean, that is the purview and the responsibility of the council. I think one thing that we can do better in our city is to work with our council. I remember being on that council, and I remember my first 2 years on the council and how difficult our budget was. It was handed to us a month before, and we were expected to not ask questions and to pass it. The next year, we began to interview department heads and get questions answered. The next year, we began to really dive deep, and I am very grateful to the work that the council continues to do to make the budget process better. That's their job. And so, as we work together, my hope is that they will bring the responsibility of representing what their neighborhoods need, what the city needs, and bring that to an early on collaboration with the mayor's office. And the mayor's responsibility is to communicate back to the council the needs of the city and what we need administratively. And that's not something that they understand in huge depth because they're not living it day to day, but that's the responsibility of the mayor and the mayor's staff to communicate so that they feel like they have a comfort level there. So I think if we're working together, we're making better use of our city's government and our funds that we have, those precious tax dollars. And so that's the kind of relationship I'm looking for as we work with the council.
So I have to commend our city council. They have been doing some fantastic things, and I'm sure you're not aware of them because who puts on their calendar to attend city council meetings? I know there's a million. Oh, you do, yay! Pam, you do. I can vouch for that. They are doing amazing things with the budget. I sat in a meeting where they talked about, let's give this a try, and if it doesn't work and we don't see an outcome, then let's cut their funding. They are budgeting for outcomes. I love that idea. Something I would like to implement as your mayor is what's called a 3% stress test. Has anybody had to deal with that at their employment? Oh, Norm has. Yay, Norm. What it is we say to every director, if there were a situation where we had to cut 3% from your budget, where could you cut it? We're not saying we're going to cut it. We're just saying dive deep into your budget. Look for places you could cut, and then present to us the 3% that could be cut if needs be. It is such a great way of keeping people honest and on point and on task. And at that point, you allocate the budget. That's the beauty of a budget. Every public meeting can be adjusted and allocated for the needs that they see fit. I'm a strong proponent for balancing our budget. Our Board of Education, since I've been on it for 7 years, we've won the CAFR Award every year, which is a huge award for being able to balance your budget when you're dealing with millions of dollars. And I'm proud to say that I'm a good steward of money. I've earned people's trust, and I believe in balancing budgets and budgeting for outcomes.
By state law in Utah, the municipalities have to budget, as does the state of Utah, has to operate with a balanced budget. It's not the case nationally. We're very fortunate to live in the state. We're very fortunate to live in this city where budgets are balanced. There are major financial issues being unresolved in many of the larger states, and some of the larger cities in America have gone bankrupt because of these issues. This is a fiscal year budget, not a calendar year budget. The municipal budget starts the 1st of July and goes to the end of June. Early in the primary, I was in, after filing for mayor, I was in several budget meetings. Not just one, not just two, but several budget meetings. The city council did take $100,000 out of the mayor's budget. And there was a hue and cry and some weeping and wailing some pretty strong talk in one of those meetings between council members and the mayor about these cuts. One of the great assets we have with a council mayor, not the other way around, it's a council mayor form of government, is the council has absolute control over the money. This is the same way the legislature does in Utah. The governor can propose the budget, but the legislature makes the money decisions. At the national level, that's the case. And we have that balance of power here in Provo with a council mayor form of government. As the mayor, you have to work closely with the council. Obviously, you need money to operate the city departments in public works and planning and parks and recreation and financial administration and the various other things that occur. All of that has to be taken into account. It takes a fair amount of technical expertise to make good decisions relative to those issues. Great question.
This is our last question, and we'll ask it to Michelle first, and then Odell, and then Sherrie. And we're in a time crunch, so 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
A minute and a half.
I get life's in a time crunch. I got it.
But it's an important one. Utah has a housing crisis. As mayor, how will you address and plan ahead for the increasing housing demand in Provo, which demand is and will be brought about by many demographics of various shapes and sizes, including young single adults, young married couples, and low economic families?
You don't start that 90 seconds till now. We do have a housing crisis. I was talking to the president of the Realtors of Utah County, and he told me, Michelle, if you wanted to move, because I asked him, what if I'm a first homeowner and I have a small family and I want to move to Provo? He said, you better have around $300,000. I said, what? I don't. What the heck? I don't. Who does? He said, it's amazing. People, that is the starting price for starting homes. I could never have moved here if we had to pay that much. We would not be able to be in a home, which is fine and understandable. So that's one issue we've got to address. The second is mixed housing. I'm a big believer in, with our BRT coming, let's do some high population housing for people that want to get on the BRT and then get to the front runner and get back. I drive my daughter to the front runner to go up to school every other day. Yeah, I would love to not have to leave a meeting and run her down there. I believe we have to look at pocket neighborhoods. We have to look into the future. We have to not be afraid. We have to not be afraid to look at these various neighborhoods. The one thing we have to do is smart development. We don't want to build something that 10 years down the road we regret. I believe the neighbors need to have input.
One of the things that makes Provo is its neighborhoods. And every neighborhood is distinctive, and it's impressive to see the amount of new housing that's been built out in this area of town, in this newer school. It's also great we live in a free enterprise system. And it's great that we don't have the concept in Provo that we're going to take over all the housing because we're a public entity and we can dictate where it goes. Fundamental of the American dream is home ownership. I'm very concerned with all of this focus on transit systems and multiple housing, that too often we are losing sight of what makes Provo Provo. What makes Provo Provo, what gives us our fundamental strength as a community and as a culture and in our neighborhoods is the home ownership principle. Yes, there are changes that are coming. But I think it's important that we balance all of these other needs. By the way, you're looking at the city commissioner who built the first senior citizen subsidized housing unit in Provo. It's on First North, about 6th West. It still stands, it's still serving a great need. There is a need for the public entities to be involved in this, but fundamentally, it's a free enterprise system. And it's the home ownership first that will keep our society and our city strong long term.
I marketed for the builder that built a third of Daybreak. It was a mixed-use development. You go up there, if you drive up there on a weekend afternoon, there's people at the lake, there's people walking around and biking and using the trails and running down to the little retail area. It's a really different way for Utah to develop. But people love it out there because there's a multiplicity of housing types. They can start in an apartment, they can move up to a townhome, they can move up to a small home, they can move up to the next big home. And you know what? Even when they get ready to retire, they can move down. And we don't have any big spaces of land like that except for out on the west side. And right now, the neighborhood and the community is working to develop that area. But we have to look at the data. Affordability is going to be an issue for a very long time because we do not have the labor to build to the demand. Land is expensive. So do we have to insist on quarter-acre lots? Do we have to insist on large lots? Or can we allow people who want to live a little bit closer together and have that affordability? What does that look like in a neighborhood? The last thing is we've got this huge growth coming in this area. We've gone through 3 hurricanes and a fire. What's that going to do for building materials? We've got some problems to solve. And during my first 100 days as your mayor, we're going to sit down together as a community, learn the data, figure out the data, and then work with our council and the rest of the community to solve the problems.
Thank you, Sherrie, Michelle, and Odell. We appreciate you being here. Can we have a big hand for them? We are supposed to be out of here in 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask you, this is the 3rd block in church, pick up your chairs and put them in the back. and we'll give you a few minutes to talk to the candidates. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the jam and the treats up here. Thank you.
And thank you, moderators and the timer, for your help.